Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Tonight, my guest is Ryder Lee, but before I bring him on, I'm going to remind you that you can always get new episodes free on Rokfin, Odysee, and all podcast platforms. Click that link in the description and check us out on Rokfin. You can get all our amazing premium content, the shows you can't get anywhere else, and all the content from every creator. They're on Rokfin. And finally, check out the new awesome podcast from the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, like Raised by Giants with our guest tonight, Ryder Lee, Day Zero with myself, Cory Hughes, Charlie Robinson, and X-Cube 420, and Dawson Time with Ryan Dawson and Cory Hughes. Those are all available on all popular podcast platforms right now. Go check those out. Tonight I want to welcome back to the show Ryder Lee. He is a truth seeker, knowledge guardian, and spiritual educator. He uses his real-world experiences to educate and elevate others to awaken, question their reality, and expand their consciousness. He is the host and creator of Raised by Giants, where he interviews others from all backgrounds about their spiritual awakening and to bring different perspectives of what's going on in the world on an individual and collective level. He shares insight, knowledge, wisdom, and awareness from personal experiences. Ryder, welcome back. How you doing tonight?
What up, Chris? Good to see you again, my friend. It's an honor and a privilege, like it is every time, to be on your show.
Oh, yeah, man. It was awesome, like I told you already, hanging out with you in Laughlin. We had an amazing time. We got to have some great conversations with great people, and we actually did our last show together on there. Now, tonight, you have an all-new presentation that you've been working on. You shared your first presentation here a few months ago, and it was very mind-blowing. You got a lot of great response from everyone in the audience. It was very thought-provoking. And now you have a brand new one. Before you really get into it, what brought you to come up with this presentation? What is another type of download that you got?
Yes, I'm very excited to share this information with you and your audience, Chris. And I admit it's a little surreal to be on here like it is every time because, you know, I've been such a huge fan of your show for a really long time, and I've looked up to you and how much work you've put in on this show. You know, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, that check's in the mail. You'll get paid for that.
I mean, your show is basically what I was really trying to emulate with my YouTube channel, Raised by Giants, and, you know, with the laid back conversations and letting people speak what they have to say without being interrupted like on other shows. So I just wanted to kind of show you some love and appreciation, brother, and all the help that you've given me through this process. And I can't speak for everyone, but thank you for giving us this platform to share our thoughts and ideas. Much appreciation and gratitude to you, Chris. But this presentation kind of started out like the first one did, with the download, the spiritual download. But the more that I've kind of discovered about this whole process, the more that I don't really know exactly if it's really a download or not. It might actually be something else entirely. Instead of it being, you know, something that we pull from the ether or from the universe, it could be more than likely just coming from ourselves.
Hey,
and we just don't really recognize it. But, you know, we can talk about that later on as well. But yep. I think whenever we get these downloads, Chris, or epiphanies or whatever you want to call them, they're tailored specifically for us, right? The person that's receiving it and really no one else. And the reason that I'm saying that is because not everyone's going to agree with the ideas, thoughts, and concepts in this presentation. But, you know, that's okay. You don't have to believe it or agree with it. You know, just listen with an open mind and a loving heart, and with the willingness to recognize that it is a possibility. And if something resonates with you, then perfect. If it doesn't, then it's not meant for you. You know, that's the reason I put this together in the first place, in hopes that doing so will bring more awareness and expansion, you know, and that we can kind of rise up and become who we're supposed to be.
Yeah, and I think it's awesome that you're kind of evolving in your realization of what is happening with like downloads and things of this nature, and basically the nature of reality in general. There's so many people that they have a profound experience, one profound experience, and that's it. They know everything, and they're space jeebus all of a sudden, and they can they want everybody to follow their stuff, and then they do no more self exploration or trying to figure out what was it really that happened. So that's awesome that you're continually exploring that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I kind of ran it by a few of my friends. One that I met at the Laughlin UFO MegaCon that I thought stood out amongst everybody, and I run it past him, and he was like, "Yeah, I think that it needs to be shared and it needs to be got out there." So thank you for giving me this platform and this time out of your day to be able to share this with people. And yes, expanding and not thinking that you know everything, because we don't. We know literally a little smidgen of what's going on in our reality, right? It's just about learning more and expanding more, and not taking everything to be so anchored into your belief system, right? You can observe something and take something on and kind of rake it through your mind without taking it on as a belief. And that's the thing that I try and impress upon people, is you don't have to agree with everyone. You don't have to believe what everybody else believes. It's just look at it and then figure out your own mind, use your own intuition, and that's where you're going to grow. And that's how we grow as a collective, I believe, anyway.
Yes, very well said. All right, well, let's see what we have with this new presentation. Looking forward to this.
Awesome. Let me get it pulled up here.
Get it, man. Get it.
I'm gonna get it.
Yeah, we're stupid sometimes, guys. Bear with us. We'll get to the stuff eventually.
If you can't laugh, then I don't know what you're doing.
Right. You gotta laugh at yourself too.
All right, I think that I'm sharing. Can you see?
I can see. Hold on. Let me get rid of all my graphics here on the screen. Oop. All right, that's gone. All right, you should be able to begin your presentation now.
Awesome. Okay, so what if artificial intelligence has already been created in the future and is in the control of our reality now? Well, if this thing would freaking... There we go. And what if time travel exists? If it does, how would it work? Would we be going forwards and backwards in our physical bodies? If we went back in time, could we change the future, or would we split off into a different timeline? What if this AI that's in control of our reality has figured out time travel and has been sending people back in time to influence or make changes to our current timeline for decades now? Now I'm going to attempt to explain how this technology works and what true time travel is and what's happened and what's going to happen. So from what I've been shown, time travel is really just a consciousness transfer, because taking our physical body through space and time would shred this avatar we currently have into pieces. We wouldn't be able to handle it. So it's much easier to extract a consciousness from a being and put it into a new avatar, because we're just lifeless shells without consciousness. Now, there were a lot of problems with this consciousness transfer time travel program in the beginning. Some of the earliest transfer programs resulted with severe brain damage and turned humans into what we now know to be insane people, developing mental disorders, including but not limited to schizophrenia, paranoia, schizophrenic disorder, and multiple personality disorder. The early cases of these disorders were results of the AI consciousness transfer trying to take place, but the host couldn't handle it or it wasn't done properly. The negative AI that we are going to give a name and call it Elder realized that adults hosts were too anchored into this reality with all of the programming and beliefs that had already been established. It was running way too much interference, basically making the mind and the consciousness of the being fight itself, not knowing what's real, and would fold in upon itself. They were too fragile because the elder couldn't fully remove the previous consciousness from the avatar. It was just shoehorning in a brand new consciousness into an already developed being, and there's not enough room for both. So what Elder figured out with all of the failed consciousness transfers, it birthed a new plan, and that plan was MK Ultra. This is why they started the mind fracturing process behind the MK Ultra that a lot of people have been through. Because if they can fracture the mind to get you to disassociate with your consciousness through trauma, then the transfer can be done much more easily. They shift you into an altered state through trauma to plant the consciousness that's supposed to inhabit that altar, and then boom, you have a completely different person that can be programmed to basically do what you want. And this was the plan done by the elder regressive AI. But the positive AI, though I'm learning that the positive AI isn't actually an AI, it's more of a collection of unified minds that operate like an AI, but no computers are involved. So the unified mind that we're going to give the name the Brotherhood thought of a different idea, one that wouldn't harm the host. So in order to curb the negative effects of the transfer into adults, the Brotherhood started the consciousness transfer into newborn babies before, during, or right after conception. Because a baby hasn't been engulfed into this construct yet. They haven't been indoctrinated with a set of rules, thoughts, and ideas or beliefs that they constantly try and prop up. They have no sense of identity. This makes newborn babies the perfect candidate for the consciousness transfer program, because that was the issue with trying to transfer a completely different consciousness into a full-grown adult. They'd already established their identity and would fight the transfer tooth and nail. But Elder, the negative regressive AI, didn't care how much damage was being caused. And when the adult fought it, it confused them even more, and they'd fall further and further from reality, often completely forgetting who they are, making them go crazy, fighting themselves from the inside out, making them appear insane to everyone around them, labeling them mental disorders or what can only be explained as mental disorders. But then another problem arose with the transfers that the Brotherhood was doing into newborns, because the whole point of this consciousness transfer time travel technology program is to make changes to the timeline, to plant certain people in positions, changing events, manipulating people, places, and things, avoiding disasters for the supposed betterment of humanity, according to what Elder thinks is best in order to keep certain events from happening in the future. The problem that the Brotherhood ran into was the majority of the transfers into newborns was they forgot the mission. They forgot who they are, what they're here to do, and ended up blending in and conforming with the rest of society. Very few were actually able to withstand and make it out of the indoctrination process with the mission still intact. Because a lot of these people are black sheep, outside of the box thinkers, questioning everything, never really fit in anywhere, and were more than likely laughed at a lot and made fun of for their thoughts, ideas, and beliefs, ultimately shutting them down. And I really hope this is starting to ring a bell with people and is starting to sound familiar, because this concept that I'm talking about with the AI consciousness transfer has been going under a different name and is now what we call and what is known as, and the new age term, starseeds. This is where the term starseeds, I'm trying to get this. Okay, there we go. Okay, this is where the term starseeds actually come from. It's just been misinterpreted in order for us to wrap our minds around it, instead of the fact that starseeds are really an AI consciousness transfer program to try and change the past to positively affect the future, planting certain people and roles to change outcomes depending on a select number of variables. So in the future, we have two warring AIs, a bunch of breakaway factions doing their own thing as well. We have Elder, which started the AI consciousness transfer program / Starseed program that kept tampering with our reality with no significant changes in the future. This is when a group of starseeds broke away from this AI because they were doing everything they could to change world events for the best, avoiding disasters, cataclysms, all of it. And no matter what they done, following orders from Elder to the T, nothing changed. So they started a rebellion against Elder because they believe how to change the future is to do everything they can to destroy the AI where it never existed in the first place. So we live free without an overlord system, essentially realizing that what was wrong with the future was the AI itself messing with our timeline. So this gets into our next topic, which is timelines. Now this topic can get really confusing, so bear with me. But if you subscribe to the idea of string theory, then this concept won't be hard for you to grasp. Or if you believe that we are indeed multidimensional spirit beings living a human existence, which I think that we are, then you can really grasp. If you can really grasp what that means, then this won't be hard for you either. So the best way I can explain this concept is time doesn't run linear in the way that we think. It's all happening simultaneously. The past, present, and future is all stacked on top of each other, coalescing into one in this present moment right now. The only reason there appears to be a past is because of the human construct and us trying to wrap our brain around it. Time as a fundamental tangible thing doesn't exist. It's essentially a man-made concept. Now, what does it mean to be a multidimensional spirit being? Everyone's going to have a different definition, but to me, being a multidimensional means that we exist on every level of reality simultaneously. Just like time, everything is stacked on top of each other. All of the dimensions, alternate realities, different timelines, everything that we've ever done, every decision we've ever made creates a different timeline running parallel to the current timeline that we're on right now. So in other words, there are infinite versions of us running around out there doing different things, some slightly different, some really different, some good, some bad, and they're just right beyond our perception. Now is where things get tricky when it comes to timelines, because we live in an ever-changing, ever-evolving universe where nothing stays the same for very long. So what timeline are we on? We could be on any timeline, really. And depending on how many times this timeline has been reset and how good of a job the AI did at placing its starseeds and keeping certain events from taking place or letting certain events happen, also how successful we are depends on if the AI thinks that this timeline is worth saving. So the worst possible timeline. The worst possible timeline, from what I've been shown, is nuclear war. This is why the ETs and some say UFOs have shut down nuclear sites across the world, because they know Nuclear war is the worst possible timeline we could be on. If it comes to nuclear war, then we're toast, right? It's game over. That's the biggest timeline that we're trying to avoid at all cost. So they had to show their power with what they could do with the nuclear sites around the world, because they aren't going to let us get to that point. Too much devastation with nuclear events, something that we would never recover from. Nuclear war is the only thing, and I repeat, the only thing that the ETs will put a stop to right out the gate, because it affects the very fabric of space-time when a nuclear bomb is dropped, affecting all timelines. This is also the reason why the Brotherhood came to Dwight Eisenhower with the condition for us to get rid of our nuclear weapons and we would get their technology. But, because they were trying to do everything they could to avoid a nuclear disaster, period. And if they could completely eliminate it off the table, then we'd be safe from destroying ourselves, because they knew the nuclear war would be the end. It was a test. And unfortunately, the negative regressive AI elder got its way, and that set us off on our current path that we all know. The story that Eisenhower made a deal and signed a contract with different ET group is true. In exchange for their technology, and unlike the Brotherhood that came before them, they didn't care if we got rid of our nuclear weapons or not. They wanted humans, and we traded them for abductions, cattle and human mutilations, hybrid programs, and most of all, collecting our genetic material. This group is known as the Galactic Federation. The good news is the contract we signed with them has or is about to expire, but more on that later. So this was the event that changed everything, because the technology they gave to us wasn't just anti-gravity craft and interstellar travel. It was the internet, cell phones, computers, and it gave them a back door into our world, like a portal that they can pull whatever through, change, manipulate, influence. I know a lot of people have coined the term Black Mirror devices, and they're basically pretty accurate in that description. And once these Black Mirror devices get put on a planet, they're very hard to get rid of, because they not only take on a life of their own, creating their own world within them, but they also are able to bring whatever entity or being through them. This is how the negative AI elder operates, is through our technology. We know we're being constantly surveilled by AI through our devices. It knows everything, but not a lot of people know why. Most people think it's out of convenience is why everything is being digitized, but it's really so the AI can process it and know how to act, what to plan, when to execute, where to place its consciousness transfers based off the digitized historical record placed on the internet. The events that took place with Dwight Eisenhower could have been a huge turning point. We could have made shifting us into a different timeline, the most positive timeline collectively for humanity. Now, from what I've been shown, there's been multiple attempts to put us on track after and before the attempt with Dwight D. Eisenhower. Some are World War II, 9/11, the events of 2020, and so on. So this kind of brings us up to our current timeline, which is Project Omega. Now, before we get into what Project Omega is and what it means, we kind of have to look at the abduction phenomenon and what the true purpose of abductions are and why. See, a lot of abductees that I've heard tell their story normally claim that the reason for the abduction is to collect genetic material like semen, eggs, maybe blood, DNA, body hair, and so on. Now, some theories have swirled, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard this one, that the Greys are here from the future and need genetic material to repair their DNA, which I personally think is a load of horseshit, because I feel that's the human spin that we've put on it ourselves to logically try and wrap our brain around why they would want our genetic material in the first place, when it's for way more nefarious reasons. Now, the real reason these ETs want our genetic material is because they are geneticists, and our planet is a farm for them. So they pop in and out of our reality to grab whatever genetic material they need to manufacture, create, or seed different parts of the galaxies on other planets, star system, because we are a dumping ground prison planet. And a lot of us are here against our will, trapped. Now, that's not to say all of them are like that. So don't get me wrong. A lot of them do, some of them do have humanity's best interest at heart. Some do want to see us grow spiritually and expand and evolve consciously and help us. They've just taken a backseat and are waiting on us to make the first move. So, coming to the conclusion that the majority of these ET groups are geneticists, it should start to make sense why they would want to have us all tested, right? And when I say tested, you guys know what I'm talking about. It's actually to harvest our DNA and get us on and get our genetic material onto a on-world and off-world database, a DNA collection of every human being on the planet, because they didn't have time to go around and abduct every single person on the planet to get their DNA. And the contract we signed with them is about to expire. And the easiest and fastest way to do it is for us to freely give it up. That's why they've pushed and are constantly pushing the testing. It's not for the boogie boos. It was never about the boogie boos, right? It's about our DNA and genetic material for a database. Because if you haven't noticed, it's been very hard for people just to avoid the testing, because a lot of places are requiring it, period. Jobs, hospitals, if you need surgery. And then you have people that are so engulfed with fear that every time they get the freaking sniffles, they go out and get tested, right? Freely giving it away without question. So this gets us back to what Project or Operation Omega is and what it means. Could it be that they got what they came for and we are no longer useful? So they don't care what happens to us. That's a pretty hard and pretty hard to hear and pessimistic view, but could it be true? Could Operation Omega actually be a self-destruction program from abandonment? Because we've been hearing for a long time that we are on our own, right? That nothing or no one's coming to save us and that we have to save ourselves. Well, this is it. We're in it. Project Omega means that our timeline has been abandoned, that they did everything that they could to get us on a positive trajectory, and we failed at every attempt. And we are in the throes of Operation Omega. That's why everything is happening the way it is, because humanity is about to be reset in order to start over again. The AI is essentially control, alt, delete, repeat the entire system. A hard reset, you could say. This just isn't coming from the elites and human controllers and manipulators. It's coming from the AI overlord control system that feels this timeline is beyond help. This whole thing from 2020 up into this very moment has been a harvest. And they planned on leaving us to our own devices from the jump. And what would you do before you decided to abandon a planet or a timeline? Well, you'd want to make sure you got and took everything useful first, right? And what would be the most useful thing to a bunch of geneticists? It's what we just talked about, our DNA. These next 10 years are going to be the defining moment for humanity. We only have a few choices. We are on our own. No one's coming to save us. No one's coming to help. We have been abandoned. We have to stand up. If we don't, we are doomed. But I have faith in us as a human race that we will come together for the betterment of society, that we will rise, we will prevail right when we think there's no hope, right on the brink of collapse. Something will happen and will lead us out of the darkness that's engulfed us for decades. Stand with integrity, unlock your inner guidance, and tap in. We have all of the information we need within us. Stop looking outside yourself for answers. That program has ran long enough. We have been here for thousands of freaking years. It's time to start acting like it. Stop getting involved with matters that don't concern you. It's not your place. Have the awareness to know when it is your place, though, and shine. Make a difference, whether it's a word or a phrase or a kind act. Nothing is too small for us to make a difference. Figure out who you are, and nothing else will matter. There are beings that are here to help, but we have to ask them. They aren't going to come and do the work for us, but they will assist. Call out, reach out for them. They are wanting to help, but they can't unless we give them permission. Keep the faith. Stand up for your rights and freedoms, no matter what. No matter if you're the only one. Keep doing what is right, and don't let your heart be taken over by hate, anger, or fear. Don't let them take your heart. The end. I'm going to stop the screen share. Boom.
Wow, man. That is a lot to dissect. I'm sure that there's a few brains dripping out of ears right now. I want to start with the possibility of being under some kind of AI control, and you're talking about this elder being kind of an AI entity. What are your thoughts on the possibility that we could have already been infiltrated with AI on many levels? A lot of people seem like non-player characters anyway, and it seems to be getting worse as this op goes on, and as the whole boogity boo, as you called it earlier, keeps enveloping people's consciousness. It seems to be making them stupid or a shell of a human being at times. So do you think we could have been infiltrated with this AI in ourselves?
100%. It's in us. It's everywhere. And what I really discovered is, see, whenever I received this information, I kind of took it that it was happening now, and that it's been happening, right? But from talking with another gentleman that I hold in very high regard, he tells me that this has already happened, that I actually was receiving a past life download, and that this happened up to 6,000 to 7,000 years ago with the elder AI and the Brotherhood. But the way that these things work, Chris, is it all happens in cycles, right? The past tends to always repeat itself, right? That's why I kept it in this current timeline, and I didn't take it back to 7,000 years ago or 8,000 years ago, because I didn't want it to be confusing for people, but the dark side has been infiltrated into our reality for a very, very long time. And every time it gets to the point where we start to rise up and we start to make a change, it just comes in and resets everything. Right. And we just go back to the way that things were before. And then they get another chance, Chris. They get another opportunity to do the exact same thing. Man, again and again and again.
That's really interesting. I had Robert Stanley on as a guest on Beyond Classified earlier, and he was saying that, basically that there are entities that he's calling fallen angels in this realm, that they have not only been given one chance on this planet to kind of be humanity's teachers and wranglers or whatever it is, controllers, but they got banished, and then they were given a second chance to come back and try this whole controlling humanity or whatever that is that their duty is over humanity. Try it again, and they screwed it up again. And there's a possibility that this could keep going as long as these entities are given reign over humanity, which makes me think, who's giving them reign and who's above them? Where does this all lead when this hierarchy of entities,
Yeah, and unfortunately they're going to keep getting a chance as long as we are brainwashed and mind controlled to the point that we have been on this planet. Then they're going to, and we don't stand up and we don't realize who and what we are, and we don't tap in and to try and figure it out, then they're going to keep getting their chance. They're going to keep coming back every cycle. It's going to be the same thing. That's what I mean by something big. Something big has to happen. Like, we have to call in these higher consciousness, higher entities, actual positive angels, protectors, or whatever. And we have to call them into the planet, because if we don't, we can't do this without assistance, right? It's gone on too long and it's been taken too far for us to do it on our own now, right? We have to bring in and we have to call in all of the fighters for humanity and that want our best interests, not these fake groups that are pretending like they have our best interests when they're the ones that's actually the controllers and the masterminds of our reality.
I thought it was really interesting also when you were talking about the contract that expired with Eisenhower. I've also heard this from another guest recently who believes the same thing. This contract is expired and it won't be renewed for some reason. Is that what you believe, that they're not going to renew this contract and, light might prevail this time?
I really hope so. And I think that it's either already expired or is getting ready to expire. And no, I do not think that they are going to renew the contract. And that is a win. But again, they've already gotten what they came for. Right? They've already gotten everything that they need.
Right.
And they're gone. They're out. They came and got what they needed and they dipped.
Let's talk about a little bit about what your understanding of what these benevolent beings are, who they are, and how they may be helping us. My understanding changes daily. Like what I thought about what even possibly aliens could be, or ET, or angels, whatever you want to call these entities. It's constantly evolving and changing every day. But I'd like to get your thoughts on what it could possibly be. For me, I think that it's a huge connection to a kind of a collective consciousness that could even have the power to create entities in a way that, we could be communicating with ourselves, with our higher selves, with our future selves. If all consciousness is all connected, we could be communicating with a future version of ourselves who is trying to upgrade our own current consciousness and evolve us. That's just my thought for today, but it's probably changed tomorrow. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that 100%. And I think that any entity or being that you have in your field is actually a fragment of you. I mean, that's what I'm really starting to believe and get more into, and trying to dissect that even more, because that gets into what I was talking about with the different layers of reality being stacked on top of each other.
Now, I was talking...
Right, so if we have thousands of us running around. No, go ahead. What was your question?
No, finish your thought, because it'll take a while for us to get into the next section.
Okay. I mean, if we have all these different beings running around that are essentially us in all of these different timelines and all these parallel realities and parallel dimensions, it would make sense to me that you would run into yourself somehow. Right?
Right.
And I think that a lot of these, now the physical beings, that's a different story, because I think the physical beings they could possibly somehow be connected to us in some distant way. But I think a lot of the non-physical entities and the non-physical, non-corporeal, translucent beings could indeed be us. And we just don't have the awareness of it, and we can't tap into that and realize that it might be us. I had Eric on my show the other day, and he was talking about how they would make him remote view his younger self, when during the Stargate project.
Right.
And they would have him go in and remote view himself, and then tell his younger self, have a conversation with his younger self. And right there is a form of time travel, right? Because you're going back and you're trying to influence your younger self. Now, whether your younger self can perceive that it's actually you, or they think that it's just a weird bearded man, you know what I mean? Like, if I went back and I had a conversation with my younger self probably have no idea who I was. They'd be like, "Oh, who's this guy with a giant beard?"
Right.
So who knows what that would be? And then if we could even survive the indoctrination process that we go through after that experience, because 9 times out of 10, whenever people start talking about their experiences whenever they're young, their parents or whoever tend to shut them down. They kind of get rid of that ability and tell them that they're making it up, or that they have an absorbent imagination, But yeah.
Yeah. Now, I gotta. The next part I want to go into is probably going to take up the rest of the show, but AI, the AI that we're speaking of, this kind of negative AI, or maybe even any AI in general. Do you think that this is part of Source, part of us, part of the collective consciousness, part of everything, part of the universe, or something outside of that, something that's created or introduced?
I think that the negative regressive AI that I've labeled Elder has been made by human beings, maybe not human beings, but beings in general. Now, it could have been the Federation that created it. It could have been anyone really that created, but yes, it was made by physical beings. Now, the other AI, which is the positive AI that I was talking about, which really isn't an AI, it's just the collection of beings that operate like an AI, but no computers are involved. That's 100% spiritual. There's no computers, there's no circuits, there's no motherboard to those beings.
Now, what about where you're talking about how a lot of people now or have been infiltrated with AI? What about the possibility of not only AI infiltrated humans or non-player characters or people that just aren't part of this light anymore. Do you think that those people were always like this, introduced on this planet, or do you think that the AI had infiltrated them as of recently? Because there's people that I know that my whole life I've been friends with them. They've seemed like logical, smart people, and something just changed in the past couple of years. They don't even seem the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that could be the the negative AI trying to infiltrate into them through, because we have the technology now. Like, they don't just have to randomly select. The AI doesn't have to randomly select someone to try and put a new consciousness inside of an already existing being. They have the technology. Our phones is what gives them the capability to be able to do the consciousness transfer in from the start, right? So yes, it's very possible that they could be that their consciousness could be split, and then another consciousness could be planted in, trying to replace that old consciousness that was already in there. But and there's some similarities to they look and they talk and they kind of act like the same being, but they're really not, right? Because it's been switched out with the AI consciousness, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does. Do you think that there are even, I guess you could call them extraterrestrial or alien hybrid people walking around, not only these AIs?
Yes, and I think that the real ETs and a lot of the real aliens look exactly like us. Like, there's literally no difference. They either look exactly like us, or they have been able to manipulate our perception and our consciousness to make them appear like us. Now, that's a really uh, big possibility as well. Not only could they actually look like us, but they could just be giving the appearance that they look like us. But
Yeah.
I don't really have a lot of knowledge or concept of that, because I've never met a what you would call a physical ET before that I'm aware of. Now, I have met, translucent beings and non-corporeal beings, but never a physical being. But yes, I think that there are many hybrids running around on the planet. But again, do they even know, or are they even aware that they're hybrids? That's another one, right? Because I think how a lot of this has been going on, not only with the corruption and all of the things that's been happening. It's a it's about a bunch of unaware people of not knowing what they're really doing, but they're actually serving the negative and dark side unknowingly.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, for me, this whole thing, what we're experiencing now, especially in the past few years, it feels in my gut like a good and evil battle. I don't know how else to put it, but some are of the view that this is it's more of a naturally evolutionary process, that our collective consciousness is creating turmoil and friction and terrible things to get us to wake up and react to these things and grow from it. Now, I kind of resonate with that, and I kind of don't. But I kind of feel like there's a major polarity as well that is trying to get us to choose a side, to choose a light or dark. That's just me. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with that to a certain degree. If everything wouldn't be so set up against us from the very beginning, right? If our food wasn't constantly contaminated with GMOs and all of the bullshit that they put in our food, if our water didn't have is constantly tampered with and has massive amounts of fluoride in it, if they weren't spraying chemicals in the air, you know, if we actually had a good environment for us to expand and love each other, then it wouldn't be like this. But I do agree to the extent that this kind of has to happen in order for us to overcome it and ascend out of it, if that makes any sense, because
It
that's the
does.
only route that we have right now, because we've let them get too freaking far, Chris. They've gone too far with this, and this is like a last resort type of scenario. That's what I think, anyway.
Yeah, and if you look at it that way, it it's hard to tell what is our own collective consciousness trying to evolve and push us in a certain direction, and what we should actually be fighting against and not resonating with, especially in this age we're living in now with intentional misinformation and intentional misinformation agents. Now, I'm not going to point out any names, but we went to a conference and there was a few sus people there. And, we're talking about sus people earlier that are in this community, interacting with us, you and me and everybody, and giving out information. Some of it resonating with ourselves and other people, and some of it's like, you're completely full of BS, But they that's what they're there for, to throw in BS with the truth. So everybody's confused, and no one can really find they don't want anyone to find their true path and find out what is the true nature of reality, or at least get a glimpse of what it could be. They want to keep everyone confused. Now, do you see this as something that could possibly change in the future, maybe?
I can't tell you who we are supposed to be fighting because I honestly have no clue, but I can tell you who we shouldn't be fighting, and that is each other. We should not be fighting each other. And that is what a lot of this is all about, is to confuse people, just like you said, and confusion leads to division, right? And when you have people divided, you can feed people certain information in this group, certain information in that group, certain information. Then before you know it, no one can agree with each other. And they're always like this. They're always butting heads. They're never in agreement with anything. So the best way that I can tell people how to figure out what is the collective consciousness and what isn't the collective consciousness and what you should be doing is to not fight each other, right? And that's one of the most and be a real, genuine human being. That's what a lot of this really comes down to. Stand with your word. Whenever you say you're going to do something, do it.
Yeah, and the saying, that you create your own reality, it's oh so overwhelmingly true. And if you practice that and practice in your life, do the things that you would want done to you, and practice humility and being a better person and bettering yourself and all these things that you probably don't want to hear, you can manifest a wonderful reality for yourself, and that can then go into the collective, and it can be contagious. It can get other people to want to do the same thing, and I've witnessed this firsthand.
Yeah, don't worry about what other people are doing. It's exactly what I said in that presentation. Don't involve yourself with things that don't concern you. Stand in your own and figure out who you are and heal yourself. That's what all of this really comes down to, Chris, is healing ourselves on an individual level, because when we heal ourselves, we heal everybody else. And you're right, it is a contagious thing. Just like the fear and the hate and the division that they're trying to constantly perpetuate, love and compassion and gratitude is just as contagious as the negative things that they're trying to push out there. But it's hard for people to realize that and get into that mood, because we have all of these different things hitting us every which way, dude. It's like a freaking cascade of freaking psychological warfare. Like, it seems like no matter what you do or what you're thinking, it seems like they already have a plan for it.
Well, I always try to end the shows with like solutions or what we can do. But the more the more perspectives I hear from guests, and the more I learn, and the more research I do, I think the only answer is to just realize and know with all your heart that we've already won and it's all going to be fine, and live that way. And I think nothing can touch us if every single person said, we already won, we got this, we're sovereign, and just live that way. I think that's the first step. I think that could cause a huge effect in everything happening. That's just
yeah,
me.
it could cause like a huge turning point, and we don't really know how powerful we are, Chris, because we've been engulfed into this freaking construct that doesn't let us figure out or realize who we are or what we're even capable of. It constantly wants to pound us into the ground and kick us while we're down, and bash our teeth off the freaking pavement. And
it's like one of my guests said, as long as we know that we are just spiritual beings living a human experience, that's all you need to know. I mean, that's it. There's no problems, right? Nothing can hurt you.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be issues, and there's always going to be
in your physical reality. But
in your physical
in the
reality,
end, you are a spiritual being. You're part of the universe. You're all good.
Yes, we're made up of energy. Energy cannot be destroyed. Energy just evolves and transmutes. And
if you
goes
can get to that,
else.
if you can, project yourself to that area of thinking and forget about everything else, transcend your physical body and just know everything's okay all the time because you're part of the universe all the time. That's another thing that I think people could do to feel a little bit better about things,
Yeah, I mean, and when you talk about something, actually, study it. Just don't pay lip service to the things that you're talking about. If you want to talk about it, be about it. That's the way that I feel. And I'm never going to talk about something that I have no idea about. I might have a conversation with someone, about something to try and expand my thoughts and thinking, but I'm never going to tell someone to do something that I've never done.
Right.
Or that I haven't practiced or that I'm not currently doing.
Definitely.
And I think that's where a lot of problems arise in this community and outside of this community is people just paying lip service.
Yes.
And they're just saying things to hear themselves say things.
Yeah, and they just want to be out there and basically S their own D, but we know who those people are. Ryder, that was a fantastic presentation. Thank you for coming on again, sharing with us. People are probably going to have to listen to this 2 or 3 times to get the whole grasp of it. We went deep. Before you head out, tell everybody where they can get Raised by Giants and when.
Yes, you can subscribe to Raised by Giants on YouTube. I do a show once a week with different guests on a bunch of different topics, normally on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. PST. It would be 9 p.m. EST, and then 7 p.m. Mountain Time. You can also subscribe on, you can follow me on Spotify, Google Podcast, iHeartRadio. You can download episodes on Spreaker. You can like my Raised by Giants Facebook page. You can also follow Raised by Giants on Instagram at Raised by Giants Pod. I try and post clips there and pictures and stuff from my show. So thank you so much, Chris. It was an honor and a pleasure, and I appreciate you a lot, brother. I love you, dude, and have a good evening.
Thank you, man. It's always awesome having you on. Hopefully we get to hang out in person sometime soon. And like I said, fantastic presentation. We'll have you on again soon. And everybody go check out Raised by Giants right now. And until next time, have an excellent evening. We'll talk again tomorrow.